Little group waits. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. This is Rob here at Smirking Gun Reviews. Back to do more Holidays 2020 reviews where we've talked about some pretty movies that we didn't really like. And that's why it's so nice to be talking about a movie not only that I like, but I'd never seen before somehow. And that's why. And the crazy thing is that while we were watching this, I just happened upon something that said today's the day that it was released 28 years ago.
Oh, wow.
This somehow landed on the actual 28th anniversary of the movie airing for the first time. Mm-hmm. And I'm watching it for the first time. So this is pretty cool. This is really happenstance. Kismet. So I knew about this back in 92. I was still in high school. And because of how I was being raised, we didn't really see a lot of this kind of stuff. So it's not unbelievable that I didn't see it then, but over the last 28 years now, I have to actually it's really easy to do the math of how long it's been. Over the past 28 years, I don't know why I never saw it. And now that I have, I'm really, really happy that I have, because I've never really seen any of the Christmas carols. I know of them. I know people in them. I've seen select scenes that you just kind of can't avoid when you're into pop culture. So it's one of the most, famous old classic movies and lines, and, so I'm not unaware of it. I know the story beat for beat. Without ever having seen this, but I really thought that this was very cute and clever and hopeful and sincere and charming, as Bill in the chat of the Discord was talking about, that it's just oozing charm, sincerity, heart and soul, and it's a lack of cynicism that is in a lot of Muppet stuff. At least most of our characters aren't cynics in this. Even the weirdest ones like Gonzo or whatever, they're not down. There are characters that have that written in to be a contrast, but for the most part, the Muppets have that kind of sincerity and believability, and it overflows in this, without it being like a big distracting mess of Muppets everywhere. Yeah. It still tells a really tight and contained story that doesn't allow a lot of distractions, a lot of A, B, C, D, E stories happening, just to throw in characters that we like fan service wise. You said you've seen this a bunch of times, so why don't you tell share with me and everybody else what your thoughts are on this movie, as a general whole.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I grew up with this movie. I have memories that it was actually a Christmas gift from my best friend's family. And I'm not sure if it was the Christmas we spent Christmas together. It might have been, but we ended up basically sleeping over at their house for 2 days and doing Christmas together as a family, which was the most ideal Christmas ever for to just spend it with your best friend, your BFF, right? Just move in for a few days and chaos and insanity and all the great things about Christmas. And so I can remember we would watch this every Christmas Eve, which is why I love the song, "There's Just One More Sleep Till Christmas," because then it literally was true while we were watching the show. I think what I loved, as a child, I love the musical numbers. I love the humor. My favorite character, I guess, it was a tie between the Gonzo and Rizzo sort of Laurel and Hardy team up they were doing, and Kermit's more sincere role as representing the Cratchits. But yeah, the humor, light the lamp, not the rat. Put me out, put me out. That was hilarious. And the fact that Gonzo is trying to be the literary expert in this, and Rizzo is just ruining everything in the sweetest way possible. They're trying to sell apples, and he's eating all the apples, and Gonzo calls him out on that, or Rizzo calls him out on that, and Rizzo's like, well, I'm creating scarcity. I'm driving up the market price. So I loved that. One sort of insider bit I can give you is we had the original VHS tape, and on the original VHS there was an extra song that was in the film called "The Love Is Gone," which is reprised later at the end of the film with "The Love We Found," which Scrooge sings with all the Muppets. But it's a song with Scrooge and his love Belle, after she realizes he doesn't love her. He loves the money, and he loves pursuing that. And they have a conversation where, another year before we're married, Ebenezer, how longer is it going to, how longer is it going to take? And he keeps saying, I'm doing this for you, Belle. I'm just one more year and I'll be partner in the firm. And she's saying, well, you said that last year and the year before. And then she has this beautiful song about, the love is gone. It was the sweetest thing that ever was, but I release you. I wish you well. Now I leave you on your own. And so she releases him from their engagement, which would have been a big thing in the Victorian period, to release someone from this. And I guess the most touching scene is that Scrooge, actually Michael Caine, walks into the scene because he's watching this in his memories, right? And he sings a duet with her at the end about, it was almost love, it was almost always, it was like a fairy tale that left out you and I. Yes, some dreams come true. Yes, some dreams fall through, and now the time has come for us to say goodbye. And Caine is crying while he's singing this right behind her, and he goes to reach for her, and then she walks off. And so you see this, he realizes what he lost in her, and the potential of, hope and a life of love and family, and potentially children, and what he gave up for his pursuit of business and money, and it just took over him. And like Rizzo was crying into a hanky, and Gonzo's like, it's okay. He's like, but they cut that in the Disney DVD, and so it's a bit hard to find now. And I'm not sure if you saw that with the streaming, because I was watching a different version.
But it should have been in there, because I can honestly say that was probably only cut for time. Like they were trying to get that in under a 90-minute. Certain, especially back then, they had that kind of hard, got to get it under like an hour and a half. We got kids in the seats. We got multiple showings. We want to be able to make as much money off of it, But I think it would have been great for character, even more like crushing, because one of my only kind of complaints was that, we don't really get to see, we know the story so well, kind of pop culturally and literature, but through the literature of Charles Dickens, that we don't get to see this Scrooge be that bad. He kind of like, there's a little less conflict in him. And I think that if they would have left that scene in, it would have given more of a punch to what he feels he's lost and losing.
Yeah. So when the original film came out in cinemas, it had this scene in it. And when it was released on VHS, it had the scene. And then as soon as Disney started making DVDs of it, they cut that scene up.
Huh.
Why? I don't know. Maybe they thought it slowed down the pacing. I mean, it is a slower song, but it's also a very divisive song. If you've seen that movie, you're either in the camp of you love it or you hate it. There seems to be no middle ground.
Wow, I didn't know that this deleted song had such controversy.
Yeah, so
something that doesn't even make it, it made it into the movie originally, but then was cut at the DVD level.
Yeah, so
that's weird.
It is. So I remember one of my friends like just a few years ago, I told her I had the VHS copy, like the old VHS copy, and she was like, "Oh my word, can you copy it for me? It has the song. We bought the DVD and it didn't have the song." She was so upset about this, so I gave her a copy of mine because I mean she already bought the DVD, right? It just didn't have the song in it.
I partially want to run in the other room and see if it's sitting there, but we've moved all the tapes that we have from back when we were kids. And I'm trying to think if one of these is if Muppet Christmas Carol's been in there. And we don't have a VHS player anymore, but if it is, I've been meaning to get one just because we have a bunch of tapes floating around. I want to see what's on them. But yeah, that back in the day, man, when you could just put a little black piece of tape over something and tape it for somebody else or copy it.
Yeah.
That's how we saw things a lot of times, was passing the tapes along. So there's so many things that I want to say about this movie and everything around it. Cause like you had said, it was like 1990 that Jim Henson passed away. And this was the, like, after Muppets Take Manhattan, and there were a few things that they did, a couple of, nothing major, I don't think. I think this was the first big thing that they did since he'd passed.
Yeah.
And
very much like a love letter to Jim, everybody that was involved. From what I've seen in the behind the scenes footage, and they did like a documentary on the making of the Muppets Christmas Carol. It seemed like it was kind of, everybody wanted to do this project for Jim because it had been kind of his last, I guess, idea that has his fingerprints all over it. It's kind of similar to, when Walt Disney passed away and we look back and go, oh, this is the last movie that Disney did that actually had his, fingerprints on it. So,
this also feels like a little bit like some of the things that he was trying out with, like the Dark Crystal and with Labyrinth, mixing the like more mixing of live action, telling these stories with different kinds of characters in them. I like the fact that the three ghosts aren't familiar faces. Yeah, I mean, they use, Waldorf and Statler and Waldorf for Marley, but they went with the more kind of traditional looking ghosts, which I thought was really interesting. That would be real easy to just play that for laughs and for fan service. And I felt like Jim was getting into a more kind of serious, but still for kids, kind of like, if he hadn't passed, I feel like he would have just been upping his game with how to tell stories through puppets. We would have seen some movies that like would have blown our minds. But Brian,
hi, Raina, by the way, there's people in the chat, so I just wanted to.
Oh,
we're here.
Raina's here. Yeah, I don't know who else is here. I can't. If you see more than one person, then I wish, because I think my comment section thing doesn't really work that well. But Brian Henson, I think has done a pretty good job taking over for his dad for the most part. Yeah. And like, one of the other things that I noticed right at the beginning is the old Disney logo from the 90s. We don't have the CGI Disney castle, like that I've been used to seeing for the past close to 20 years.
Yeah.
This is that old.
Hi, Bill.
And Bill's here, that little whistle at the end. It made me go all the way back to, oh my gosh, just that early 90s. Like around the time I think that they stopped doing that was like Toy Story. Once Pixar came out, I think they started changing the way that their logo looked.
Yeah.
But that was a nice little throwback. That really freaked me out though internally.
You're like,
because time all of a suddenly the time went, oh man, that's how old this is. And just like when you watch these things, right? The work that goes into them.
Yeah.
It's been said like doing these kind of movies is one of the most difficult things you can do in the entertainment business is to try to do big, extravagant puppet stuff.
Yeah.
I love it's amazing.
Yeah, I love the opening scene because from the documentary of how they made it, they had the kind of mini town that they built as a model that we fly over with the camera, but the areas where Scrooge is walking, they had to downsize it so it was the right size to work with the Muppets, but it also could work with a human. And so they were showing, like, when they filmed the scene where he's walking and they're singing the song about Scrooge and how, when a cold wind comes in, it chills you to the bone, right? And he's walking by. The actor actually was taking like really small steps so that he fit within the the style and the sizing of the set they were working in. So that was kind of neat that he couldn't just walk normally because the puppeteers and the puppets wouldn't have been able to keep up with him while they were filming.
Yeah. And these people that film it are masters of perspective.
Yeah.
Being able to make things look like they're, that there's a lot, like these shots all have layers in them and shot a certain way so that it all still looks like it's like happening, and being able to create that kind of believable world where you just stop thinking about this isn't real and you just are caught up in it.
Yeah.
That's some of the great, like the cinematographer, like in this does not get enough credit for basically showing how to get all these to look like this.
Yeah.
And also, just like I said, that in that first scene when you see all the puppets and the people together and you see all these different characters that we know and everything, we feel that kind of comfort in the Muppets when we see this kind of world, I think. And even though they're all there, it's not overrun with Muppets. Like I said, this movie isn't full of distractions. There's little bits of here and there somebody will say something, but there's not every 2 seconds somebody running in saying, "Hi, I'm this movie's, this movie's version of such and such a character." Like, they kept it real simple, and I really like that. And then Paul Williams, of course, returns to do the songs. Paul Williams, I think he's been affiliated with the Muppets going way back to the 70s, and like the Muppet movie. And the thing is, it's like I know this man is an artist outside of the Muppet movies, but I literally know like none of his songs that are outside of the Muppet movies. I just know that he's always the smaller guy with the weird glasses that wrote all those songs.
I just love that every single song it's hummable, it's singable, it kind of gets in your brain, and they're memorable songs, and there's not really a bad song in the lot, which is hard to do with a film, and they're also songs you don't get tired of, or at least I don't personally. We talked a bit about like Brian Henson was the director, obviously Jim Henson's son, but he had done puppeteering forever with his father, and then went into directing. So if you've seen Labyrinth, he was the voice of Hoggle in that, and then he directed obviously this movie, Muppet Christmas Carol, but he also directed Muppet Treasure Island, which you haven't seen. So if you like this style and humor and approach to directing, you should check out Muppet Treasure Island. It's quite
I plan on it.
And Muppets from Space he also did.
I've seen. I love Muppets from Space.
He performed the scientist doctor character.
All right.
Yeah.
Brian's been doing it, and like I said, keeping it, I think, as best he could for as long as he could. Now with everything being under the House of Mouse, I feel like that they don't really quite know what to do with the Muppets. Like I feel like nobody knows what to do with the Muppets, but that's like a kind of a different topic. but it's just a nice feeling because I just love seeing all these different characters in familiar worlds. And it kind of started with, they were doing their own movies. And then it started with this, that they kind of started being more meta. And, well, they were always meta, but like making meta movies where it's Treasure Island or Muppet Christmas Carol.
Mm-hmm.
They've done different genres, things like that. But the first formula that I thought that really worked starting in this movie was the Gonzo Rizzo relationship and their humor. This is a pretty serious movie.
Mm-hmm.
It has pretty serious stakes for the main character, and they do a really good job at creating that atmosphere for Scrooge in this movie. That it really was nice to have that little bit of balance of Gonzo and Rizzo's teaming up in this. That became pretty famous. I think they still up to even now do things a lot when they put those two together a lot. They write them really well together. I know that seems kind of silly, like puppets having chemistry, but the people who put them together and wrote for them really did a great job, where they're both a couple of outcasts. And just as weird as Gonzo's being able to talk chicken kind of thing, it just makes sense that him and Rizzo would be, they're both kind of the straight man and they're both kind of the joke, they can be this, each one can be the straight man in any situation, and each one can be, the Costello, or the one who does more pratfalls. Both of them are the same kind of. They can do both, and they write them really well here.
Gonzo's taking it a bit more seriously, if he can take anything seriously, because he's the author, and so he's trying to present the story. Rizzo's not really understanding how that works, but I love that they took the narrator, like the omniscient narrator voice, and made that a character within the storyline, so that we have the author commenting on the text, and it's so meta-narrative and hilarious. Like, all of these jokes that pop up because Gonzo is the author, where he's like, Scrooge was forced to light the lamps. Gonzo's like, how does he do that? And okay, hoity-toity, Mr. Godlike Smarty Pants. Because he's the author, he's the omniscient writer of the story, so he's controlling all the characters, and Gonzo isn't really buying that, a blue furry Charles Dickens, So I love that from like a literary perspective, that they're paying homage to the origins of the text, which is this great book that we've had since the Victorian times. And then the humor, like, I just I love the humor.
Yeah, and we've been also watching a lot of things with music lately, and I'm notoriously known on my channel for not liking musicals, because I don't like people singing plot to me. It's my thing. I make little concessions here and there. I like musicals that actually make me laugh, that kind of thing. But when it comes to the Muppets, I just kind of give it a pass. I like, some of the songs are fine. Some of them I just kind of did what I do when I'm at work and I have to listen to music I don't like. I'm able to just kind of tune it out and wait for the end of the song, and then I refocus. But in this, I didn't really do that. In this, I actually heard the songs at least once. Again, most of them I was fine with. I thought that they were all really clever. I'm trying to be, honest, but like fair. And because I don't like, I'm going to say that this is on the high end of the spectrum for me of tolerable musicals, because they didn't distract me and far enough away from the plot in this. Yeah. I know I really am like in the minority of everybody I talk to about musicals. But this was pretty good as far as that goes.
I remember an interview with Alan Menken, who is one of the famous composers who worked with Disney right from the beginning. He wrote music for Shop of Horrors, and he did the scoring for Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin. Like, just it keeps going and going. And I remember watching an interview with him, and he said the way that a musical piece will work, or the way it should work in a Disney movie, which is based off of like a Broadway musical, basically, is that a character only sings when they have so much emotion and there's no way for them to project that or explain it just through dialogue. Like there's so much emotion and there's so much of a buildup that they have to break out into song. And then the purpose of them singing is that you should learn information about the plot. So the example he gave was the song Belle from Beauty and the Beast. And he's like, we don't just throw the song in there because we want to give the princess a singing song. There's actually a purpose to that song. So when we listen to the song Belle, we learn who Belle is, what she wants in life, what the people in the town think about her, why she's considered weird, what her goals are. Like this whole song has a purpose, and it's supposed to turn the plot, while also allowing a character to express themselves in a way that they wouldn't be able to just in dialogue. Like, this is my goal, right? She actually.
I absolutely understand that. I absolutely understand why the guy says that. I mean, it makes sense for a musical, like explaining a musical and why the song is there. I just don't like plot being sung to me. It is just a weird little glitch in my way I watch something where I'm just like, don't just tell me, don't sing. But again, it's not always like that. Like I said, if it engages me to where I'm laughing, I'm fine. If I'm just sitting there listening, I can't. I've tried so many times with so many musicals, and I try to go in with the complete empty mind and try to get rid of the whole "you don't like musicals." I'll try to put that out of my head, and it either works or it doesn't. Most of the time, it does not work. It worked. It helps that I care about what's being said on screen. It helps that I haven't seen it, and it helped that I like the universe. Yeah. If I'm just going, like, if somebody says, hey, you want to watch Mamma Mia, if they told me what it was about, and then they said, oh, and it's also a musical, I wouldn't need to hear any more. I'd be like, I'm not watching that because I don't care about that plot. So it's like my musical tastes run like the Little Shop of Horrors route, or like Muppet Musical, or things like that just literally the songs are jokes.
Which, interesting enough, Brian Henson was the puppeteer for one of the Audreys.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So there you go. I guess one of the things we talked a little bit about the design. I loved how they did Jacob and Robert Marley.
Yeah.
The entrance for that, with them popping up out of the stairs with the smoke and the chains. I thought that was really well done.
Oh, it was really well done because at first, they're like looking tangible like them, the way that they did that, and then there were tangible chains that looked more like they were really doing something. I thought that was all they really did a lot, and that was something I was just about to get to, which is about the look and the feel of it. It didn't. One thing that kind of surprised me was it wasn't a very bright and colorful movie. It really went for the look of the time and the feel of the time. That it was dismal and cold, and you could feel the poverty in the air. And they didn't have it all looked kind of like natural lighting, even though it was on sets, but they did such a good job with the lighting and also the lack of lighting.
Yeah.
That was really impressive that they went for it. I mean, sure, it might save the budget, but it takes a risk to make it look that good and have people be interested in what's happening when everything is so dark and bland. It comes through in the characters and the writing, and that authenticity really sets an atmosphere and a tone that is a little less regular Muppets.
And I mean, talking about setting a tone, when I love what they do with the music when Scrooge shows up, his first entrance, and they start his song, and all the lighting is like a blue tone. It's like everything goes dark when he shows up, and Rizzo's like, "Whoo, did it suddenly get cold in here?" Like, so they're personifying his character and his just cruelty through this. He even just creates coldness wherever he goes, and I love that.
Yeah, and they're set up for when they come in. It's this very sad, pathetic scene of him coming home and just sitting in front of the fire. Like, the first thing I thought was, man, anybody who complains about the time we're living in, you imagine if that was your night, was just sitting in front of the fire wrapped up in blankets, eating your meal, and then just going to bed.
Yeah,
because there's nothing else to do.
And the thing about Scrooge is that is his choice. Like, he is so stingy and miserly that he will not use coal for himself, let alone for his bookkeepers to keep warm. He's like, no, that's money. I'm not burning that. And like, his food is like the same thing every day. Like, simple, basic, save all the money. Why? For what?
Yeah. But as they transition from him eating, they create a really great, creepy atmosphere of what is going on in the house. It was legitimately, like, I mean, I'm not saying I was scared. I'm saying that, like, if you let yourself get into what the character feels, it felt legitimate for that character to be scared in that situation.
Yeah.
Again, the way they shot it, the way they lit it, it all really worked. And the camera work around him and kind of that sense of paranoia that he had. Like, I forget that I'm watching a Muppet movie.
Yeah, because he's so good in the role of Scrooge.
Yeah.
Michael Caine is just...
Oh, yeah. Michael Caine.
One of the things they noted in the behind-the-scenes documentary is that even though he was acting with Muppets, he treated it as though he was acting with other people. Like, he approached it seriously, which I think shows quite strongly in the film, and I think it does a lot for the film.
The kind of patience you need for that kind of, because really, I mean, a lot of people probably walk into these kind of roles and are annoyed. They're there for the paycheck, and they're used to just, they can't, I think a lot of actors probably can't adapt as well as others, where it's just like, what am I doing here? Fine, you know what I mean? Like,
I'm singing.
It's different than, like, you can just see people that, like, a lot of these kind of movies that have female guests, or I mean, real live actors in these scenes. You can always tell who's taking it seriously. Who's there for the paycheck. And Michael Caine was definitely not just there for the paycheck.
Yeah.
Also, go ahead.
Just one quick side note also is that this was written in the Victorian time period, and there was a very strong sort of ghost story popularity at that time.
Oh, yeah.
So for Scrooge to be nervous and or to be like, bah humbug, he thinks he's seeing things, would be very, I guess, counter to the time. Most people would think it was a spirit or something. So it even shows in that how closed off he is and how he doesn't believe, even though he's seeing these ghosts. He's seen the door knocker transform. Just shows how much work needs to be done with his character to put this sort of sense of belief and hope in him.
And that brings us to the ghosts. And it comes pretty fast. It comes at you pretty fast. This movie clips pretty quickly. like I said, I like that they used their original like characters or characters from like the lore that like especially the Ghost of Christmas Present looks a lot more like the stuff from the literature. In future it's always some form of the Grim Reaper, which has been out there forever. But the Christmas Past one was kind of a surprise. I didn't know what it was going to be. In fact, for a little while there, I thought it was like a joke, and then it was just going to be somebody else like underneath it. I don't know why, but I really liked all this. I mean, he pretty much is ready to change by the first thing. I think other versions of this have shown like more pushback from Scrooge between situations where he'd kind of start to get cynical after, and it wasn't until they show Ghost of Christmas Future that he finally like snaps out that this isn't, this is to be taken seriously, like really seriously, instead of momentary bits of guilt that he has where he can't, but then immediately starts to just ooze back into himself. Caine in this movie to me felt like ready right away. Once you showed him, especially when you got to the lost love you were talking about in the song, seeing like he was always left alone. He was put on the wrong path by his headmaster. He had a lost love but because of the like wrong path he was on, it had him chasing things that he did exactly what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And the thing is it's that be careful what you wish for, you might just get it. He did such a good job at being the one way that he thought he had to be that he missed out on everything else. And it's that, regrets and can I turn my life around thing. And that's where this movie, like, because this movie hit me where I lived. Where I live, not in the past tense. This movie hits me where I live in this part because I never really thought about Scrooge and the journey before the character was going on and everything. Because I don't consider this like this movie takes place at Christmas time, but like It's a Wonderful Life, I don't feel like it's a Christmas movie. It's a movie that takes place at Christmas where a guy sees how badly he's been and been on the wrong path for so long that now that fear of, is this it? Am I over? And that desperation to try to fix things in your life. It's pretty sobering for me because it just feels like I was, because here's my reviews, guys, because we get personal on here. We get honest to a fault. It just feels like I've done the same thing. Like, since I was like in my late teens, I kind of committed to a certain way of being. And here I am, I flash forward to now. And it's just now that lately that I've been really thinking about, oh man, like I kind of like I was so good at being that what I said I wanted that I didn't realize that I might change someday. And looking back on all that, I feel very much like Scrooge right now, where it's like, so this movie hit me pretty hard. Not where I'm like, I gotta tell everybody something, like.
But hey, nothing wrong with that, right?
Kind of like, do the proverbial look out the window and say, what day is it? Really? I still have time to fix my life?
Which I think is the main message of this movie is, if Scrooge can change his life, the guy that nobody thought could change, the guy that everybody detested and felt was so far gone, anybody can change. In terms of like Scrooge turning too quickly, I didn't feel like he really turned until the very end, but I felt that all of these encounters with the different ghosts, there was something he needed to learn.
Yeah.
So each time he was meeting a new ghost, he was either learning something about himself, about his family. It was kind of like unlocking the locks on his heart. Like there were 3 things that he had to learn and go through, and then he had to actually be willing to take that jump, that change. Do you want to talk about the change, or is there still stuff you want to talk about in the movie?
The change is, doesn't really it doesn't really bother me. I just thought it was interesting that this version just kind of, to me, was like already like, oh, just get me out of here. Like he was much more willing. To me, Caine's performance was a much more willing to go along with it, or at least how they wrote it and how they shot it. He didn't have a lot of scenes once he was in the spirit's grasp, there weren't scenes of him being nasty again. We got all the nastiness right as he was sitting down at the fireplace. And for the rest of the movie, he is being tortured by his guilt. And it's not written as like that he lashes out at any moment in that whole time. He stays pretty even keel or emotional on the side of his own guilt. He never flares up in anger, I noticed.
I felt like he was just constantly learning or just in a state of like shock. And
and it's not a criticism, it's just an interesting choice.
So the first ghost is a child, which would have been sort of the norm for a Victorian era ghost. There was a lot of like art around like children as angels and
cherubs and all that stuff,
wings, and so that to me just harkened back to a very Victorian sort of approach. But I like that, he's sort of taken back by that. He has that line about, but you're just a child, right? And she's like, I can remember nearly 19,000 years, in the past. So we do see his past, I guess, and how he's changing slowly. I love that they made Fuzziwig, the character Fuzziwig, it is played by Fozzie, so he's now Fozziewig. The Swedish chef scene with the singing food.
That did not go on for long enough.
It's like, nope, mother always told me never eat singing food.
I did like in Ghost of Christmas Present when he sees what his nephew thinks of him. I thought that was interesting because he puts on a good show in front of his uncle, and then when it's that kind of he only has this guy as his family, and his own family talks about him behind his back, and he knows that it's only he's the only one to blame for all this, is that pushback, so I thought that was a really good scene.
I mean, his nephew Fred has always been the character that tries to reach out. He's always been the character that in the book is like the positive, good character, and that's because he is the son of Scrooge's sister who tragically died, and and that's part of why Scrooge is the way he is. He is in the books. He feels a lot of anger at Fred because his sister died in childbirth, and so he transfers that anger of you murdered my sister, right? Your birth caused her death, and she, I believe, on her deathbed asks Scrooge to take care of her son, to take care of Fred. And so there's always been this kind of contention where Scrooge sees Fred as, when he sees Fred, he's reminded of his sister. And when he thinks of his sister, it's just all that anger and loss and whatnot. So he can never really open up to Fred. And Fred's kind of this, always offering the olive leaf and always having the door slammed in his face. I didn't see that scene as as being quite as, mean-spirited as some people might see it. If you do family gatherings and you're playing board games or whatever, there is that member of the family that's just going to use that kind of harsh humor. And Fred's humor isn't even harsh, but we certainly do see that he's aware, of his uncle's sort of what his uncle is known for, and he's the nephew of the guy that's the most hated in town.
Yeah, all really, really, really good stuff. And the last thing that I thought that was really great, and I think this is in the book probably, when he talks about the measure of a man, and by the size of his the company that he keeps, who wants to be around you and everything. Again, like I said, I'm not big into holidays. I'm not big into a lot of different things, but when it's universal, when the story is that universal and tells you things like that, this movie made me think. It made me think, and I can't believe that a Muppet movie made me think about my life. Maybe I would have thought about it if I'd seen, A Christmas Carol or something, but this is what I saw. And so it does make, kind of like the next day, every day is the opportunity to do something different. And, it makes you go, well, am I going to have it in me to be a little nicer tomorrow? Try to be a little more positive about things, maybe that's, that kind of thing. And if movies don't do that too much anymore, inspire you to try. I keep finding that the more we look to the past, in the movies, the more lessons there are to be learned.
Yeah.
In things. I feel like there's not a lot of lessons left in movies anymore. And this one did a good job at showing me a few things that maybe I needed to look at myself, not intentionally. The movie's not intentionally trying to bring anybody down or anything like that. It's to make you feel good. And, instead of feeling bad that I feel these things, it's like I should try to take it and turn it into a positive. We'll just see if that works. The harsh light of day in COVID America, in a little backwater town in Illinois that has a lot of ignorance. We'll see how long I last. But
you got to start somewhere, right?
Got to start somewhere. So this movie, like I said, was really good. And I dare anybody right now to look up Muppet Christmas Carol review and find one that goes into so many depths as this one did. Okay, we talked about stuff. We got honest.
We did get honest.
We always get honest on the channel. It's not just a review; it's a state of mind.
One thing that was kind of cool that they did was with the Ghost of Christmas Present, because he is constantly in the present. He says, my mind is filled with the here and now, that now is Christmas. He has short-term memory. He has no long-term memory, and his short-term memory is not so great, so he keeps forgetting things.
Yeah, that was a really nice touch.
It was hilarious. We're of course, because he's constantly in the moment, right? So he's wait, did I tell you?
Also, and how he started aging.
Yeah.
The color in his beard was going until by the end of it, he was all white.
And I love that it gives Scrooge the chance to actually start making jokes. He says, there's over 14,000 or however many brothers have come before me. And Scrooge is oh, imagine the laundry bill. And, so we start to see that Scrooge actually was a funny, kind, interesting person before he changed. And I love that. One of my favorite lines is when he has that change and he's just so giddy running around, doing everything new, putting out the coal for the bookkeepers. And he goes to visit Bob Cratchit and he plays that kind of joke on him where, why aren't you at work, and being his old self. And Miss Piggy, he says, I'm going to raise your salary. And her line is, and I'm going to raise you right off the pavement. I'm like, wow, like,
No,
where
that's a
is
good
she
line.
from? Like, is this like New York? Is she from the Bronx? Like, what? Is she related to Peggy Carter? Like, this is wow.
The writing sometimes, man, the writers for this write way above their pay grade, and I think it's just a lot of credit to knowing these characters.
Yep.
Knowing that is something that Miss Piggy would say. Just picking those perfect words isn't easy. That was a really clever exchange of violence, a threat of violence. But I gotta say, I had not heard before. My personal favorite, before we go, my personal favorite funny moment was was such a simple one, and it was Rizzo and Gonzo, and Gonzo was just like irritated with him, and Rizzo just like seeing that and then kissing Gonzo on the nose, like yeah. Cracked me up because it was just so like that's how he just deals, like that's how we're dealing with this conflict, just, and
yeah.
that's it.
We should do that more often in our family circle. I mean, I can attest that psychologically, like from a therapy perspective, addressing anger and frustration with compassion and love is not what people expect. And even for myself personally, like when I get frustrated about something or I'm having a disagreement, my dad's perfect at this because he'll just be like, come here, and he'll like hug me. And I'm like, no, I'm mad at you. Don't hug me. I'm supposed to be mad. Okay, fine. This is a nice hug. Okay, you're not so bad. All right, I do love you. Well, just forget whatever I was mad about. Like, it diffuses the situation. And so that was sweet. I loved the jelly bean scene where he's like, just jump, God save my little dead broken body, yeah! And then he forgot his jelly beans, and so goes right back to the bar. You're such an idiot, right?
Yeah.
And the turkey scene where he's like, they're cooking turkey down there, and he falls down the fire, like a fire chute, and Gonzo's like, I knew you weren't suited for literature. He's like, and then what was the other one where he falls into the barrel after Gonzo accidentally lights his tail on fire trying to light the lamps, and he's like, come on, Rizzo, just grab onto the stick. Pulls up this like popsicle Rizzo.
Oh yeah, and he just smashes it later. He's just like crack.
Oh dear.
Yeah,
and then he just clean the window. He's like, wow, this town really is getting dirty.
And yeah, that's the Muppet Christmas Carol. It was really, really fun to finally see. Really interesting to talk about. Like I said, it made me feel things. It made me think things. I laughed. I got emotional. I got honest. And in a movie that's from 28 years ago, from when I was still in high school, can have that kind of emotional impact, then I got to give it a thumbs up. I would say this is probably like a B plus, not an A, but a pretty like A minus, B plus movie, somewhere right in there. But I really like it, and now I'll probably be looking at it more often come this time of year, which leads us to when we're doing the next one of these, which is going to be at a weird time because I've got a bunch of things going on. But the next one of the live reviews is going to be on Sunday afternoon around 4:30, somewhere between 4:30 and 5, where we're going to be discussing the Nicolas Cage, Dana Carvey, John Lovitz flick Trapped in Paradise, about three guys who decide to rob a small town bank and how their desperate attempts to get out of town before a Christmas snowstorm keeps them stuck there amongst the people that they robbed. And I love it. It didn't do well at the box office, I don't think. I still keep it a pretty good space in my heart for it because it's just funny and it's a good Nicolas Cage movie. And so that's going to be on Sunday afternoon, late afternoon around 4:30. We've got Fandalorians tomorrow night at 8 and His Dark Materials on Monday. And on Sunday night at 8 p.m. Central, we are going live again for the third episode of the Comics You Love show, where we'll be discussing the best of comic books from the month of November with some special guests. So tune in for that too if you want to hear some comic book chat. And immediately following this, I'll be on Twitch playing Cyberpunk 2077. So, Corrie.
Tuesday we have Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Oh, that's right. See, there's so much. Tuesday we got
there's so much going on.
On these reviews where we do Fandalorians, we've got Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 2 retrospective that we're doing. Holy moly, I'm going to be so busy. So that's all going on, everybody. Thank you so much, Corrie, for being here.
It was a pleasure. And Bill mentioned in the chat that you can watch the When Love Is Gone song on YouTube. So
yes, everybody that here in the chat, Bill and Raina, thank you for being here, and see you guys in the archives. Again, we will be back Sunday with Trapped in Paradise. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being here, Corrie.
No problem.